Look, I've been a sports journalist for 30 years. I've written about Pete Rose, I've written about Deflategate, I've written about the 1919 Black Sox, but there is no darker chapter in American sports history than what happened in the 1992 Minnesota Pee Wee Hockey League. My family had recently moved to Edina in the southwest suburbs of Minneapolis, and I loved playing hockey. So I joined the local Park District Pee Wee Hockey League, and because I lived in District 6, I was assigned to the Hawks. And it was great because they were literally the best Pee Wee hockey team in Minnesota history. They'd won literally every state championship, well, except for the one in 1973. Coach Reilly was the winningest coach in history, and not just Pee Wee Hockey League, I mean literally anything, with a lifetime record of 1,273 wins and 1 loss. The 1 loss, of course, being the 1973 state championship. God, that yellow second place flag really stood out like an eyesore. Anywho, I loved playing, and I loved being on a winning team. And frankly, I agreed with Coach Reilly's sentiment, it's not worth winning if you can't win big. I found it very motivating. So anywho, we're halfway into the regular season, we're 5-0, and we show up for our next game against District 5, which we knew we were going to win. Look, when I moved to Edina, I knew it was a good neighborhood. District 5 was clearly lower middle class. They didn't have proper equipment or uniforms. A lot of their parents worked 2 jobs, overtime, so the hockey games were the only times these kids weren't roaming the streets putting dog poop into discarded handbags just to feel something. Like, seeing it now as an adult, I recognize my privilege. Anywho, we'd heard a rumor that the District 5 coach had died, or at least had some sort of severe arm problem. So imagine our surprise when we see that the new coach is none other than Wrong Way Bombay. You gotta understand, Gordon Wrong Way Bombay is like a legend in Edina, Minnesota, but not in a good way. Like when he missed that penalty shot in 1973 and the Hawks lost, the town still had a parade just to boo him, a 10-year-old boy. To this day in Edina, if you screw something up, it's always, hey, get a load of Wrong Way Bombay over here, clang. Anywho, we played the District 5 team and we smoked them 17-0. It wasn't even close. Our star player, Adam Banks, scored a new Hawks record with 4 hat tricks. But Coach Reilly really impressed upon us that this was a team full of losers and we should have won 34-0. It's like he always says, it's not worth winning if you can't win big. But it was the day after that that changed everything. Me, Banks, and McGill were out rollerblading in our sick matching Hawks warm-up uniforms when we found the District 5 team in an alleyway in possession of an entire box of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues. The 1991 Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition featured model Ashley Montana in a stunning Adrian Vittadini one-piece paired perfectly with a woven hat by Brenda Welch. The discovery of an entire box of these magazines would have completely destabilized the lunchroom economy of every middle school in Minnesota. This was like finding a suitcase full of gold, or at least the opposite of a purse filled with dog poop. That box was worth millions on the lunchroom market, and you think we were going to let those District 5 kids have it? They wouldn't even know what to do with it. We wanted those magazines, and we were going to take them until that full-grown man, Fulton Reed, showed up. Fulton Reed remains one of the greatest mysteries in sports. Who is he? Where did he come from? Does he live on the streets of Minneapolis? Does he actually go to school? How old is he? I've done the research. There are no answers. The following week in the season was when things got really weird, because we had heard that the District 5 team nearly had to forfeit against the Jets for taking falls and trying to draw penalties. Coach Bombay had literally been training the District 5 team to cheat using the mantra, take the fall, act hurt, get indignant. But you had to remember that District 5 was one of the lowest performing school districts in the state. These kids had never even heard the word sarcasm before, so the word indignant just completely flew over their heads. When we heard about the cheating, Coach Reilly kind of brushed it off. He was like, they cheated and still lost? Wow, they suck at everything. Of course, this was right before Coach handed me a box of donuts and told me to take it to the District 9 rink, but more on that later. But this is also when money enters the picture, because Coach Bombay convinced his boss at the law firm to sponsor District 5 to the tune of $50,000. They went on a friggin' Nickelodeon super toy run inside Hans's sports shop. Was it on a shelf? Great, we're getting it. Was it in a display stand? Great, we're getting it. They spent $7,200 in 5 minutes in Hans's store. A quick word about Hans. He always told people he was Scandinavian, but never specified which Scandinavian country he was from. He moved to town in 1946, where he opened his shop that looks like a Bavarian castle,
And Hans is a very German name. I'm just saying, I've looked into Hans, and that's pretty much where the trail ends.
This is when things got even crazier, because we're warming up for our next game, and suddenly Coach Bombay and some lawyers show up saying Adam Banks has to quit the Hawks immediately and join the District 5 team, who are now called the Ducks. Something about Park District lines being redrawn last year, and now Banks lives in District 5. You know how weird it is to be a 12-year-old kid and get a hard lesson in gerrymandering? I felt really bad for Banks. He was a good kid. He didn't deserve that.
Adam Banks' dad was good friends with the Ducks sponsor, Mr. Ducksworth. They made a reasonable request for Adam to remain a Hawk for the rest of the regular season, which at that point was only 2 more games. Like, come on. Coach Bombay basically told his boss that he would prefer to make his best friend's 12-year-old son miserable, and rightfully got fired.
So with Banks on their team and the 28-year-old Fulton Reed, the Ducks were able to just barely make the playoffs.
When I read Larry Bach's article in Let's Play Hockey magazine, America's #1 hockey publication, about the Ducks making the playoffs, I knew there was more to this story, so I got my ass on a plane to Minneapolis.
The Ducks won their next 2 games against the Hornets and the Cardinals, setting us up against them in the finals. I read all about it in John Link's article in Let's Play Hockey magazine, America's #1 hockey publication.
I've never cared for John's writing. It's always riddled with grammatical errors. But knowing the journey of these 2 men vying for the win in a Pee Wee Hockey League state championship that is somehow only around the city of Minneapolis, in a battle nearly 30 years in the making, through a season that had already seen the absolute worst in humanity, there was no bigger story in sports that year. And that was the same year as the NBA Dream Team at the Barcelona games.
Then came the championship game. We got out to an early lead over the Ducks, mostly because their goalie, Goldberg, just plain sucked. But Banks was a huge threat to us because he knew all of our plays. So Coach Reilly told Larson and McGill to do their job, and let's just say McGill understood the assignment a bit too much. It didn't exactly help that Banks scored on that play. Great work, McGill. And then 2 minutes later, the Ducks bring in that 28-year-old giant, Fulton Reed, who literally propelled our goalie, Jeff with a G, off the ice and into the back of the net.
Later that night, I called up the acclaimed physicist Stephen Hawking, and I asked him about the physics of Fulton Reed's slap shot. And he said if that goalie Jeff with a G hadn't been wearing his athletic cup, the velocity would have caused a tear in the space-time continuum where his left ball used to be.
Coach Reilly was so pissed. He was like, "You blow this game and nobody makes the team next year." And I was sort of like, well, okay, but this is Pee Wee Hockey League. Like, that's kind of how this works. We're going to high school next year. This isn't a career for us. Anywho, that's when the Ducks used one of their secret weapons, Tammy the figure skater.
You have to understand, this was right after the '92 Albertville games, where pairs figure skating couple Keith Mosley and Doug Dorsey competed. They were immediately disqualified after their very dangerous Pamchenko twist, but they proved that a hockey player could transfer his skills to figure skating. Coach Bombay dared to ask the question, what if we did the reverse with a little girl? It was a huge gamble, but it paid off.
Good God, those spins were dazzling. So Tammy scores, but then that idiot McGill body checks her, and okay, McGill, now you're getting your ass beat by a 28-year-old man. But it was great because now Fulton's out of the game, which gives us the advantage. But this is also when the Ducks brought out their big secret move, the Flying V.
As a play in hockey, the Flying V is colossally stupid. If it's not done absolutely perfectly, it's offsides. And even if it is done perfectly, it leaves your team completely defenseless. The only reason it worked in this one instance is because nobody had ever seen something so asinine before.
We were all very embarrassed that we let the Flying V work, and I do actually think Jesse was offsides for part of it, but the refs didn't call it. Anywho, it ties the game up at 4, and suddenly with just a few seconds left, Charlie Conway gets a fast break. In the heat of the moment, I did what I had to do, and I clipped Charlie from behind, setting him up for a penalty shot. We knew that this was a weak spot for Charlie, but it turns out Coach Bombay finally did some coaching, and Charlie scored on a triple deke, giving the Ducks the win. And our goalie, Jeff with a G, who 20 minutes earlier nearly lost a testicle to the cosmos, but now because he technically lost the game for us, suddenly he became the new town pariah in Edina. We had a parade to boo him too.
How can you even talk about the Ducks win without mentioning the path of destruction that got them there? A team who can't win without cheating, gerrymandering, corporate money, and illegal plays? If that's not an allegory for where we are as a country, I don't know what is.
But the craziest thing happened after the game. We go outside the ice rink, and the FBI, the Minnesota State Troopers and a hazmat team are standing there waiting for me and Coach Reilly.
During the regular season, the only team that really posed a threat to the Hawks' undefeated record were the District 9 Panthers. And it turns out Coach Reilly had sent one of his players with a box of donuts coated with the measles virus to the Panthers' ice rink with the intention of infecting the team, forcing them to forfeit the season.
I was eventually cleared, but Coach Reilly got convicted on 12 counts of attempted murder.
Listen to me, son. I am the winningest coach in sports history. You don't get to judge me. You're not even a has-been. You're a never was. Can we talk about your dual citizenship?
Zo, hoe wil rijden we weer like a Unglinger?